Donald Trump's turn at the podium today, and he had a lot to say, criticizing Hillary Clinton and laying out his plans for when he's in office.
She believes she's entitled to the office. Her campaign slogan is, "I'm with her." You know what my response is to that? I'm with you, the American people.
Donald Trump outlined domestic and foreign policy agendas today and explained why America needs a change in leadership.
Everywhere I look, I see the possibilities of what our country could be. But we can't solve any of these problems by relying on the politicians who created the problems themselves. We'll never be able to fix a rigged system by counting on the same people who have rigged it in the first place.
Now, a lot of people saying before this Donald Trump was having a rough week, including, of course, Monday, the ouster of campaign manager. Then there's the fundraising woes, and then the blistering attacks by Hillary Clinton. She gave a speech yesterday, but she also gave one just an hour ago. Take a listen.
He just continues to spout reckless ideas that will run up our debt and cause another economic crash.
Joining me now, Danielle McLaughlin, Steve Rogers, Ford O'Connell, and Adam Goodman. Ford, I'll start with you. Donald Trump, I think that was the speech a lot of people were waiting for. Hillary, I think later on gave a pretty good retort, but Donald, he landed a lot of blows.
I'm not easily impressed. Today I was really impressed, and frankly, if I'm Hillary Clinton, I'd be politically scared, because not only did Donald Trump, basically provide a vision, but he also, prosecuted effectively her record. If I'm Donald Trump, I give one of these speeches every week or two from now until Election Day, and it might be my most effective weapon in terms of beating Hillary Clinton.
Adam, he started out the speech with humility, saying he's running for president because this country, he wants to give back to a country that's been very good to him. Then he pivoted and was pretty impressive because he went right after Bernie Sanders supporters, making a direct appeal to them and laying out the case, of course, that Hillary Clinton, among a lot of things, was a world-class liar. The tone was tough, still Donald Trump-esque, if you will, but he seemed like he stayed on point to the way perhaps now Paul Manafort and others want.
I have to say that Donald Trump had a very good day today. He was more presidential, more substantive, more deliberate. He's appealing to the mind to justify what people are feeling inside, and he needed some of that badly. He talked about the first 100 days, immigration reform, reforms in trade and tax policy. But to your point about Bernie Sanders, which is really the fight right now between both Secretary Clinton and Donald Trump, they're both going after Bernie Sanders supporters. We've seen a recent poll saying that as many as up to half of Sanders supporters are not all that locked in and fond of Hillary. They're open game, and this is, Charles, this is her Achilles heel. This is the reason Donald Trump has a real shot in this election, because this is a referendum on the system. She is the system, and I think today he helped bring that message home.
Danielle, I think Hillary understands that, because when you listen to her speech, she almost admitted as much. I mean, it was a direct appeal to two Democratic groups that are leaning Trump. Bernie Sanders supporters and unions. She put out a lot for both of them today. Debt-free college, that got the crowd going big time. Those are the millennials. They've been going big time for Bernie Sanders. She put that out there. Her attack on corporate profits, she put out there. Higher minimum wage, she put out there. And of course, she talked about unions and creating jobs for them as well.
Absolutely. I'm a little confused by the notion that Trump is somehow going to get Bernie Sanders supporters. They are not single-issue voters. They're not going to vote on the system, the idea that it's rigged. And frankly, her policies are much closer to Sanders in almost every way. You think about immigration. She's not talking about building a wall.
The big policy, though, Danielle, I'll cut you off because I'll let you finish, but the poll that Adam's referring to, I think was a Bloomberg poll. 55% of Bernie Sanders voters said they'll go with Hillary. 22% say they'll go with Donald Trump. The other 18% with the Libertarian candidate, or they'll wait for the next Woodstock, whatever comes first. Really think about that for a moment. 55%, that is woeful.
It is a lot, but we saw this right after 2008 when Hillary Clinton basically said, came out of the race, and all of Obama's supporters, or rather her supporters, said they would never support Obama. So you see this at this point. I think those numbers are going to change. I think
can she effectively distance herself from the system, from the establishment? Because I saw signs of her attempting that today as well.
I mean, realistically, no, she is the system, and that's true. But this notion that somehow Donald Trump is the champion against a rigged system he has built certainly a primary campaign on showing people how he has boastfully taken advantage of that rigged system.
Right. You know what is interesting on that, though, Steve? The first SEC chairman was Kennedy, because Kennedy knew how to take advantage of the system. A lot of people are saying, hey, you might as well get someone in there who knows where all the hidden loopholes are, can close them, and perhaps save the American public. I want to mention Donald Trump. He made a promise early in his speech to the American voter, quote, he wants to end special interests, the special interest monopoly in Washington, D.C.
And he will. But, Charles, there are two very important aspects of this speech. One, he proved she is a liar vis-a-vis Benghazi. She never denied the narrative that it was all about a video. So she cannot be trusted. And that's going to resonate with the American people. Secondly, I'd like to know from someone in the Hillary Clinton camp, Danielle, how anyone can justify her taking money from Saudi Arabia and all of these Mideast countries that want to abuse women, that treat women like property, and kill people for being gay. They throw them off roofs. So please explain to me how anyone could support a person who takes money, which is pretty much an endorsement of her candidacy, believe it or not. How can you support that person?
I think we should be very careful about using words like she took money or she stole this. You've got to, words matter and facts matter. So yes, the Clinton Foundation has taken money from all sorts of countries, all sorts of corporations. They are doing extraordinary work in terms of access to HIV.
Danielle, you just used the word. You just used the word that she took money.
Before we get too nitpicky at Hillary talked briefly about the foundation. Can we get an account of how much has actually gone to charities, and what percentage of the donations have gone to charities, and what percentage goes to pay out the staff? Has that ever been done?
There has been more transparency as we have gone along, and it's important to know that
we don't
it's
have
a public charity.
a real account of that, though.
There is none, Charles. And getting back to the trust factor, it all boils down to who do you trust. Donald Trump is always in trouble because he tells the truth.
Well, in fact, gives him 2% truthfulness. 2%.
Ford.
Well, what I was going to say is that that's exactly right. We're talking about Bernie Sanders supporters. What Donald Trump is trying to say is there's an alternative, and I'm not going to be sucked up into the corporate donations and the crooked trade deals. And that's something that, whether or not Danielle wants to admit it, is quite important. And when it comes to the foundation, Steve's absolutely right. There's a lot of unanswered questions there. And for somebody to say that she's going to stand up for women's rights when she's taking tens of millions of dollars from countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia, who treat women like fourth-class citizens and throw gays off buildings and executing them, you have to ask yourself who's really standing up for the human rights in America.
Adam, to that extent, I think the more damning issues are when you connect the dots with the money trail. And for me, when Donald Trump talked about the foreign telecom company that was facing sanctions, somehow Bill Clinton gets a phone call, hey, you want to give us a speech? Sure. $750,000 speech, and all of a sudden the same group no longer facing sanctions. That's the stuff that people read between the lines, and they say, hey, something does not smell right there. It smells like that the power, the position that Hillary Clinton held was up for sale.
Yeah, Charles, that kind of stuff is inexplicable. You can't explain it away. Integrity still is a big deal in this election. And, of course, this was the day when the IT director for Secretary Clinton pled the fifth 125 times in a 90-minute session before a panel today. A record, I would say, though it's probably going to be a record that will be broken by some of other aides to Hillary moving forward. The bottom line in this election, we're going to see things go back and forth. We're going to see charges go back and forth. It still comes down to the same thing, and Danielle probably doesn't want to hear this. This is a referendum on the system, and the system is broken and rigged. That's where Bernie is. It's not an intellectual idea. It's an emotional idea. And I think that's where Donald Trump has real open territory.
Danielle, I'll give you the last word, but I will say it's obvious that Hillary Clinton, she did avoid these for the most part, counterpunch a little bit on this. I guess she wants to kind of focus again on, she's found her voice, there's no doubt about that.
Yes.
And I think the idea is just to sort of try to ignore these charges, or she won't face them head on, will she?
She has been dealing with these charges for 25 years. I think she wants to talk about
Isn't that a problem, though, when you have all these gates? She had like a half a dozen gates, right? Whether it was, the cattle gate, the file gate, the this gate, the that gate. I mean, it goes on and on and on. To your point, I mean, these things have haunted her for so long. Isn't there something wrong there?
It's not ideal, obviously. I think that there has been enormous amounts of money and influence directed at taking the Clintons down. But if you look at her ideas, if you look at her policies, people like me still believe that she is the best solution for America.
All right, guys, let's leave it there. Coming up, we got more on Donald Trump's speech. He highlighted